Who knows?
Yeah, we are on YouTube now. So, hello everyone. Welcome to Academy of Astrology monthly uh, podcast. I'm sorry, we are kind of 4 minutes late. That was because I have to switch between different accounts, and I realized that these Safari didn't link with my Zoom, so I have to do restart everything again. But here we are. So, hi, Mandy. Hi, Marcus. How are you?
Hi, good. Yeah.
Be good.
Well, yeah,
I'm good.
yeah. Look, so do you enjoy the hot weather here?
It makes a nice change.
Apparently, weather are very different. I just have a conversation with Alejo, who is in Athens. They say the weather is pretty bad there too. So it's like, oh, interesting. So there is a bad weather there, and we have good weather.
Hotter
So
here. Hotter here.
yeah, it's quite warm. Weather is quite nice. So, well, we have a very interesting moment because since our last podcast, we have that Mars Pluto opposition, and then we'll continue when we have the new moon or something that was like a kicking, and that was like a pretty heavy. And on the 21st, on the holiday, Easter holiday, we lost Pope Francis. And that was quite shocking, to be honest. When we hear that news, it was quite shocking. But to be honest, you really couldn't blend that T square. That was pretty powerful. That was pretty powerful situation. So today we are going to focus on the a new moon that we were just talking about, and then we will talk about a little bit about the Saturn, Venus, Neptune, and then we will move to the full moon. Okay, so well, this is the Taurus new moon at 7 degree Taurus. That's why it was formed a fixed T square with Pluto at 0 degree Aquarius, no, 3 degree Aquarius, and Mars at 4 degree Leo. That look pretty interesting and pretty heavy, isn't it? Anyone want to start a big comment?
Could you get the chart up, Rod? Is that
Yeah, here we are.
All right. Amazing.
That's better.
Yeah, look this T square. I think the Mars, since Mars was like from the something like 20 April, the Mars was move in, and then that kind of opposition is kind of already, when you see the Mars and Pluto, it's already related to kind of struggle and or life and death situation. But the one thing in Leo and Aquarius, it in one way could be the Leo creative, famous people, royal family. Oh, in another way, that would be the Aquarius with general public, with society, or some humanitarian crisis, isn't it?
That's interesting. What did you notice anything in the news around that day, Rod? I mean, because yeah, I mean, I didn't notice any. There were little themes that popped up. I mean, Mandy and I were both in the same location on that day, so we know there wasn't anything. It was just like themes that came up in conversation were quite funny. Like there were a lot of sort of like Pluto, Mars sort of related themes that were discussed. But was there anything in the news on that day, or that in world events that?
I don't know. A world event that time. I mean, well, it pretty the same, pretty sad. That especially around the United States, people were kind of
Yes,
yeah.
That's true. I mean, with the American president doing his usual shenanigans, and the political situation over there being crazy. I mean, but what's interesting, I mean, I'll just say a few bits about this chart, just the astrology, and just the basics, which is obviously this new moon is squaring Mars, and Pluto, obviously it's squaring that opposition. So the priority of the new moon in Taurus is to sort of like it's the middle of spring, so it's like initiating new growth and physical stability and prosperity and bringing in new material resources. That's the modus operandi of Taurus, and it's sort of bringing in this new stuff. With the square to the Mars, and I'm going to focus on Mars first because obviously they didn't know Pluto existed traditionally, and then we'll bring in Pluto. That adds another layer. But the square to Mars just on its own, it's in traditional astrology, it'd be an overcoming square because Taurus is the 10th sign from Leo. So it means that the sun and moon get the upper hand. So I think that's usually favorable when you're talking about a challenging planet like Mars or Saturn. But it means that there's a lot of challenges to this sort of intended new growth or beginning of new assets or all that sort of Taurus stuff, which is about building new material prosperity and security, is being really challenged by that Mars in Leo. So that could literally be people in leadership positions, potentially, if we're looking at the solar rulership of Leo, throwing a spanner in the works. It could be on an emotional level, it could something be like tempers getting in the way of it, because traditionally all the fire signs were, as you might imagine, fiery, choleric, a little bit high-tempered potentially, and Leo was one of the signs which was said to be feral, as in like when it was angry. So I always think about Mars in the signs, like Mars in the air signs are all humane. So if Mars is in an air sign, if somebody gets annoyed with you and you have Mars in an air sign, they'll attack you through the courts or verbally or through argument. Mars in Leo could potentially just go feral. They could rip your arms off, it's that kind of thing. So this could just be literally people getting pretty unreasonably angry about stuff. And some of that anger may be about stuff to do with physical security, like assets, money, land, Taurian subjects. And it may be about what they consider to be unreasonable impositions from people in positions of power or something like that. And I think the Pluto element just adds to that, because Pluto in Aquarius, as we've talked about before, is sort of like the increasing awareness of the ways that the masses could be manipulated and coerced. And there are other dimensions to that, of course, but Pluto always digs things up. It exhumes things, brings unpleasant stuff out into the light of day, stuff that you'd rather not look at. It's the shadow being brought into the light. And in Aquarius, it's all about the people and the ideals of what society could and should be like. And that stuff is dug up. So something about this new moon potentially shows that through this month could be unfolding things like we're trying to get new things started in terms of security and all that positive springtime stuff in the Northern Hemisphere that Taurus is associated with. But there's challenges from leaderships and a growing awareness of the ways in which perhaps rather manipulative, shady behavior is undermining that, and a lot of anger around that sort of thing, something along those lines. That's yeah.
Mandy, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, brilliant analysis, Marcus. And as we know, a new moon is the start of the new lunar cycle, so it kind of sets the themes for the month. So everything that Marcus said, basically, and where we might be breathing a big sigh of relief that this is the last Mars-Pluto opposition. The first one was in November, if I remember correctly. Then there was one in January, and this is the third one. This is the last one. So we breathe in a sigh of relief, but we still have this month, this lunar month, for the cleanup from some of the rage, some of the controlling things, some of the... It's about, I think, these fixed signs here, we don't have anything in Scorpio. We can't take the ascendant for this chart because it's just set for London. But the missing arm, so to speak, in that fixed T-square is Scorpio, Taurus, and the fixed signs. They're all about possessiveness and possessions and control and not wanting to let go. Whereas Pluto wants us to let go, and it will rip it away from you if you don't let go of it consciously. So I think we have collectively and potentially individually, if it hits our chart, if this new moon hits our chart, or has hit our chart very strongly with the early degrees of the fixed signs. Potentially there's some more work to do about perhaps forgiveness, self-forgiveness, dealing with rage and anger, whether it's your own feelings or somebody else's feelings that have been projected onto you, because it is, of course, an opposition. And Taurus wants harmony, right? Taurus wants things to be nice and harmonious. Mars and Pluto shows us where things aren't nice and harmonious, where things aren't comfortable. So while we're looking for comfort under this new moon, this new lunar cycle that has just began on the 27th of April, we might have to tolerate some discomfort for some time to come. But Pluto's process is always about transformation. It's always about, like you've said, in the collective, Marcus, and also, but it's also individually. It shows us the things we don't want to see because they make us feel incredibly uncomfortable, and it can be painful to look at. It can be full of shame as well.
Definitely.
Mars, Pluto is the shame of one's desires, for example, and Taurus is Taurus, and the fixed signs have something to say about our desires. So facing what our desires are and where we are ashamed and where we shouldn't be ashamed, or where we should maybe take a different path. So those are a few themes. It sounds all a little bit dark, but these are some of the themes, as well as what Marcus and Rod has already said. I think some of the things that we might need to be experiencing, looking at, and working through this month.
Yeah. Well, before Marcus say anything, Marcus, you asked me about the things happen on that day. I find pretty interesting because I didn't realize there are two things happen that day. So one thing is the Canada federal election was happened that day. And then interestingly, because the Liberal Party was kind of in the kind of a pool was behind the Conservative Party around early this year. 20% behind, 20% behind, but then they won the election. A huge surprise, because Justin Trudeau was kind of left the party and then replaced by the Mark Carney, who used to be the governor of the England Central Bank too. And then the things was happen because why they give vote to Liberal Party? Because of Trump. Trump keep nagging, they keep teasing them about the 51st state, invite Canada become 51st state of America, and they and also tariff. All these kind of things hit Canada very hard, and Canadian people are not happy. Another thing, I've been told that the Canadian Conservative Party's leader was using a slogan. What slogan he used? Make Canada great again.
Oh no. Okay.
During this time, you copy Trump in Canada, that everyone was pissed off, and then he copied Trump's slogan. That really wasn't a good one. I think that Mars, Pluto, and the Sun was pretty interesting, isn't it?
It is interesting.
And what the Canadians obviously voted for is not make Canada great again or make America great again. It was make America go away, basically.
Yeah.
That's another version of the MAGA acronym.
Yes. So another thing was pretty interesting, and fit into another two things. Fit into this chart. One is on Monday, you probably noticed the news, the huge the what do we call it, the electricity outbreak. What do we call it? The
outage, like
outage. The power outage. Huge outage in Spain and Portugal. Whole country, includes South France.
Well, that makes sense. Also, I point out that Mars and Uranus are still conjunct by Anticyon at this point. So that 26 Taurus reflects onto 4 Leo by Anticyon. So there's a hidden conjunction between Mars and Taurus in this chart as well. So that would totally fit. That's fast. That's interesting. Were there any consequences?
Another one.
Go on.
Sorry, go on. No, you finish.
I was just going to ask Rob if there are any consequences of that power outage, other than it just being massively disruptive, obviously, for millions of people.
Yeah, massive disrupted, and the people were quite shocking about this event.
Okay. Yeah.
Mandy?
Yeah, just sort of another event as well. Mineral resources under the
Yes,
earth. Just
exactly.
after this new moon, the Ukraine has signed a deal with America for a share of the rare mineral resources in Ukraine in exchange for continuing supporting the war, obviously Mars war.
Oh, that's perfect, Mandy. I mean, obviously
Yeah.
the event is not perfect, very far from perfect, but the astrological symbolism there, that's amazing. Well done. Yeah, that's a really good one.
Let me
It's
tell
an
you
earth
something.
sign.
Yeah.
It's an earth sign, Taurus, very, very the earthiest of all the earth signs, and obviously Pluto is about under the ground, deep under the ground, and Mars can be about war.
It's perfect,
so.
and the hidden power struggles going on behind.
Struggles.
And I looked up the mansions of the moon. I like to do that with the illuminations. I love this book, and it's the moon is in the mansion of the Pleiades with this new moon, which is generally a mansion associated with good material fortune, like all good things, food, wine, sex, money, good stuff. So it's actually that it totally fully on theme with Taurus. So that's a really interesting.
Let me tell you,
Andy, about
let me tell you two things.
And
let me tell you two things. The first thing is here is Zelensky's sun. His sun and Venus conjunct at a 5-degree Aquarius.
Oh,
and his Mars is a 0-degree Leo.
Where's his Saturn? Doesn't he have Saturn in Leo as well?
I don't know. We can call his chart out. Let's check.
I know. I'm sorry, tangent, but interesting tangent.
Yeah, and what's very interesting, the analysis I just read from the report. I just read from report that this deal doesn't really mean anything. They are just kind of a side deal just because Trump wanted. And this deal doesn't really say Ukraine should give United States how many things. They just say they couldn't pass the deal. Just if they sell these to EU, they couldn't sell it to US with a higher price. That is kind of a very weird deal they signed, and it really mean nothing to be honest.
Yeah, that's so spot on, isn't it? Just it's obviously that's a huge. He's going to be feeling. I mean, he does have that Sun Mars opposition anyway, doesn't he? As you said,
yes.
With the Pluto and that Mars and the new moon triggering it, he's probably feeling like kind of explosive. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting as well with Pluto coming up to his Venus. I know it's going to take a little while to be exact, and his Sun, and he's in a wartime in his country, and he always wears black, very Pluto.
Yes, that's so spot on, Mandy. And the other thing, I was just thinking in terms of the Sun, what does it rule in Zelensky's chart? Well, the Sun is the fourth house, which is the house of the homeland and of stuff underground resources. And he's got Pluto going over the Sun in his 9th house, which is foreign powers and legal issues. With the opposition to Mars, and the new moon in his 12th house of secret enemies. And of course, his 12th house is ruled by that Venus, which Pluto is coming to. So this is all like, it's descriptive. I mean, would we have been able to say that at this time he was going to be signing some contract associated with the mining of resources from his country with foreign powers? Not necessarily.
Probably not.
But it fits. Yeah.
Very interesting.
And his country's being bombed as well.
Huh?
Oh yes, heavily bombed.
Yes. No, exactly. That fits too. Sadly.
Yeah. Well, so after that, I think maybe we should have a quick look about this Venus Saturn, and Venus is kind of a sandwich between Saturn and Neptune, and then coming soon this summer, the Saturn will approach. I think this month, and by end of this month, Saturn will move into Aries too. So how do you feel about this Venus, Saturn, Neptune conjunction?
Interesting, isn't it? We're still in very Piscean energy here. I know Neptune's gone into Aries, but it's the modern ruler of Pisces. There's very Piscean energy. And what's interesting here is that both Saturn, this is a slightly different take, I think, but Saturn in Pisces and Neptune in Aries, they both have something to do with boundaries. Most obviously with Saturn. Saturn is all about boundaries. And in Pisces, it's about those boundaries dissolving and it being more difficult to hold those boundaries, whether this we're talking personally, whether it's those emotional boundaries. And then Aries also has something to do with boundaries, but in a slightly different way. Aries doesn't like to be restricted. It doesn't like to have boundaries in the way and restrictions in the way. It wants to sort of act and go directly. And Neptune doesn't do anything directly. Even when I talk about Neptune, I find myself getting a bit floaty.
We do, right?
Very scary.
Totally standard. Yeah, it's so funny.
Yeah, it's so meta. And then you've got Venus in the middle, sandwiched in between them towards the end of Pisces. And for Venus, Pisces is a beautiful sign for Venus to be in. It's all about beauty and idealism, but you're kind of clashing against different ways of looking at these different boundaries. I want to merge with another person. I want to feel one with another person or with something else, but they're putting up resistance and they want to kind of run away from me, and I'm feeling very disillusioned. These are just some little scenarios that might be playing out emotionally for people. So even though Venus Pisces is beautiful, it can be over idealistic, and it can be a bit naive as well, actually, Pisces. And again, Aries can be naive also. So there's a potential in different ways, but there's an innocence that's beautiful about Aries, but it can make both signs naive and Pisces more sort of idealistic as well. So there's that kind of disillusionment and wanting to have happy ending. Something in the way,
I like that, Mandy. I'm gonna put for once maybe a slightly more positive spin on it. Maybe we'll see. We'll see.
Yes, please.
We love that.
I'm gonna run
Yes,
with
please.
your theme of Venus sandwiched between Saturn and Neptune there a little bit, and Venus is the ruler of this lunation. So obviously Venus rules Taurus. And she's still in exaltation in Pisces. What's interesting to me about this little conjunction with Saturn and the North Node, because the North Node will inflate and expand both Saturn and Venus, is that at the end, the last 3 degrees of Pisces are the terms of Saturn traditionally. So Saturn has some dignity in those last 3 degrees of Pisces. It's almost like it's got a little bit of authority there, and it's going to be on slightly better behavior just in those last 3 degrees before it enters Aries, has a breakdown, and goes mad. So the point there in those last few degrees of Pisces is that Saturn, you can get some. I mean, the juice of Saturn is always going to be sour and astringent and not very pleasant tasting, but you'll get some juice out of that Saturn. There'll be something. So Venus Saturn there, it's kind of like a sour but strangely pleasant fruit that you wouldn't want to eat too much of because it might upset your stomach, like a gooseberry or something.
Gooseberry.
like a nice.
So a bit like when life gives you lemons, make lemonade, that kind of thing.
I think it's something like that, because I think what that Venus Saturn is about sometimes is about do you know that experiment years ago where they did with kids to see, like, they put a sweet on the table and said, if you can wait for 5 minutes, we'll give you another one. And then that the experimenters left the room and they noted whether the kids had eaten the sweet or left. It was still on the table, and they followed up with those kids, like however many years later it was, 30 years later when they were adults. And the children who were able to discipline themselves to not eat the sweet not only got a second sweet, but also it was a fairly reliable predictor of how successful they were in life 30 years later.
Ooh.
And something a little bit like about, now I'm not saying that's so you can look up the experiment. It's be on YouTube and stuff, but it's a famous little psychiatric experiment they did. The point there is that something about that Venus, Saturn, Neptune always has something about renunciation or about having to let go of something. And Saturn, Venus could be about having to either like discipline yourself not to eat the sweet, not to have the cookie, to wait, to use patience, and maybe to give up something that you enjoy in order to get something that you want over the longer term. Because the North Node is expanding the potential and bringing things in. It's a gateway. It's sort of saying there's potentials here. There's things you could bring in. And what happens when Venus crosses into Aries, she meets Neptune. So she sort of like loses a bunch of dignity, meets Neptune, and then goes to trine Mars with reception. And there's a lovely like upcoming Mars. So what's it? Something along the lines of the potential in this new moon, despite all the conflict and pressure associated with it, is for some limited positive pleasures or good new potentials to be coming in, but there has to be a lot of discipline. You can't just eat the cookie, you can't just have the biscuit that you want now, you have to hold off. And then in 30 freaking years time, after you've had to let go of the thing that you want right now, you might get a bit of something that you want. Do you know what I mean? So obviously I'm not talking literally about 30 years. This is just a new moon about this month. But, yeah. Does that make sense?
Delayed gratification. Yeah, delayed gratification, which is
that's exactly. Thank you, Mandy. I couldn't think of the phrase. That's exactly it. Yeah. Something like that.
Perfect. Perfect. And also another little point about Venus in Pisces. It wants that perfection as well.
Oh yes.
It wants that perfection.
It could see like
perfectionist.
This. Yeah, I mean, another image of this is something like really beautiful, made out of verdigris, aged copper. Like it's exalted Venus. It's like Venus is copper, and with Saturn, it's age, so it's verdigris. So there's something like that you could get that's, as you say, it's like Venus exalted is really wants the perfect beauty, the perfect romance, the perfect experience. And Saturn says no. Both the malefics say no in different ways. But Saturn here is saying, no, not yet, and not all of it. Wait. Saturn isn't saying totally no, because Saturn has some dignity, and Venus is more powerful than Saturn here. Venus has more dignity. So it's kind of like, and they are colluding a little bit because Venus is in Saturn's term. So it's an interesting one, and it's not actually a net negative. It's just going to feel like a bit of a negative initially. Yeah, something along those lines. Yeah,
and the prize is going to be a lasting thing. So if we're talking about relationships, Venus Saturn can be about blocks to relationship, but it can also be about long-term committed relationships as well. That's another thing. Bringing Neptune into it.
I'm just thinking, what do you think
dose of that idealism?
Yeah, Marcus?
I was just segueing off what you were saying there, Mandy, about what do you think, both of you, what do you think this is saying on the sort of world stage? Because we talked a bit about the sort of Sun, Mars, Pluto, and what obviously some of the tensions that's brought up, and this Venus Saturn North Node in Pisces thing seems to me like with the new moon that this is a potential new things that could I think I said this last month about the seeds that could be planted, like some positive seeds that could be planted here as well. But it may be too early to see anything on the world stage, but do you see anything?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to say from on a personal level, it could be like if you start a relationship this month, there might be a lot of built-in tensions and shadow work that you need to do to make it work, because that Sun, Mars, Pluto thing, like a lot of fixed hidden conflict. But there's also this really positive potential for something really good to develop over time if you can hold and work with the tension, something like that.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
The thing that just came into my mind as you were asking the question just now, Marcus, was we're going to have a process soon. I think it was on Saturday, so the day before the new moon, so the final day of the moon, the balsamic moon, which was the funeral of the late Pope. And now during this lunar cycle, we're going to have the conclave, and I think this Pisces, this Venus and
that's brilliant.
Saturn Pisces
Yes.
with the Neptune in Aries really kind of speaks to that as well. With the North Node, it's bringing in fresh energy, and maybe we're going to get a Pope who is going to be a little bit more pioneering, a little bit more forward thinking going forward. We've got a sextile there between it's a long-running sextile reads going on. It's going for years with Pluto and Neptune, so we've got that energy coming in as well. Ritual, structure, tradition, all of those, and the whole ritual, the whole. I didn't watch the funeral, but I saw some of the highlights on the news. There was a lot of beauty in it, and the Pope had put conditions in that he wanted it to be a funeral and a burial for the people. So that takes us back to that Pluto in Aquarius again. So that's
that's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, but definitely that's a really good catch, Mandy, because traditionally Pisces was associated with Christianity. You know,
yes, exactly.
Yeah, the fish.
Yeah,
the fish.
Really.
Yeah. Well,
and
I really hope.
The washing of the feet.
Yes.
The cleansing of the feet.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I really hope
Pisces.
things will develop like Mandy says, because I think a couple of days ago I hear another cardinal was kind of a pretty say, well, the new Pope has to deal with a lot of things in the lobby, including the gay lobby. And I was like, oh my God. I hope there will be a pioneer and there'll be more inclusion then. Because if not, a lot of things can change. Now, should we move to the full moon? Because we have a very interesting full moon coming up. On the 12th of May, we have the sun, opposite moon, sun at 22 degree Taurus and opposite moon at 22 degrees Scorpio. And the sun is, conjunct Uranus there. So, that could be something like Marcus just said, I always enjoy listen Marcus talking about interpreting the chart in the the traditional way, including triplicity and turn. And that started the previous chart. We have the Saturn Venus at the last degree of the Saturn's turn, and you say the Saturn will behave itself, and when Saturn moves to Aries, that's totally another story. Now,
obviously, I'm being tongue-in-cheek. It doesn't mean everything's going to immediately fall apart, but yeah, I do look at that Saturn in Aries has something of a kind of like, there's something of a rock and roll rebel feeling to it. It's kind of, or the mad hermit on the mountain who's running around setting things on fire. I don't know. It's just there's something about that Saturn in Aries that's interesting.
It's not traditionally a good sign for Saturn, is it?
No, it's just Saturn in its fall. So if you think like Saturn does really well in Libra, its air sign, it becomes refined. It becomes a little bit more just. Saturn still says no and is still harsh, but it develops politesse. It becomes more politic. It becomes more like, I don't know, it's still got its harsh boundaries. That's why it's Saturn in its exaltation. Because if you've got a Saturn anyway, you kind of want it to be awareness of, well, if I'm going to be harsh, I'm going to be fair. Do you know what I mean? Like you both get that knocked down, and it's got to be equal. And whereas Saturn in Aries, it's just like, I feel wronged. That's, and there's no talking to a Saturn in Aries in that sense. If it was a person, I kind of see it as being, it's like any placement, no matter what the dignity of it, can have some very constructive uses and very destructive uses. So this isn't a value judgment in an absolute sense, but it's just, if you're taking an objective view just of that symbol, then in Libra, it will tend to produce more conventional goods. In Aries, it would tend to produce more things that are harder to work with, a bit more left field, non-mainstream, and trickier to work with. It would be good for things like demolition, like knocking walls down, blowing structures up, because that's what, Aries is good at, and that's what Saturn, ruling boundaries and walls and restrictions in its fall. So I imagine there are some, maybe people working in demolition will have a bump a couple of years when Saturn's in Aries. I don't know.
Good advice for the investment.
Everything's good for something. I mean, I'm joking.
Good. Everything's good for something. I'm trying to imagine a feral Saturn, but I'm feeling that there's a lot of frustration within Saturn in Aries. Saturn slows things down. Aries wants to speed things up. So there's going to be a lot of frustration. Frustration can lead to doing nothing, or it can lead to risky things being done, and then you're getting into the demolition bit. Then things have to be structures having to be rebuilt again. And we've seen a little bit of this already. I think, even though Saturn hasn't gone into Aries yet, we've seen a little bit of this. Structures being demolished.
Yes, and they say when a planet's in the last degree of its sign, some traditional authors say its energy is already in the next sign. It's already.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that.
You can
with the slow planets.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, Sorry if I'm cutting in. It sounds like I'm cutting in.
No, don't worry, Mandy. I am too, and it's always the
I'm in a bit of delay. Yeah. But with the slow moving planets, you always find that. I mean, you could see some of the themes of Pluto in Aquarius a year out before it actually went into Aquarius. With these slow moving planets, you really start to see that overlap, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah, and then it is very interesting because I think by the end of this month, Saturn will finally move into Aries. So, remember what Marcus and Mandy just said, you can knock down the wall, or I have another interpretation. Maybe I think at least my Mars in Capricorn. So that makes me think about go to work on your foundation, go to start things again. The Aries, you start things again better. That's that is it could be frustrated. It could be frustrated, but why not start it again? Yeah.
Anyone with Sun or Mars in Capricorn, so basically both of you guys, Saturn in Aries could be quite constructive, actually, because of the mutual reception with the Sun. Either way, because it's kind of a grindstone combination. Because obviously the signs are in square, particularly with the Mars in Capricorn, Saturn in Aries, but the Capricorn placement is on top there because Capricorn's the 10th sign from Aries. So what that'll tend to do is throw you some obstacles that act as kind of like an incentive to up your game in both cases. So and with the Sun, it'll be sort of challenges to sort of identity or health, but they'll be very overcomable and ultimately rather constructive. I think it's kind of like, okay, this will help me up my game. And with Mars, it's going to be more like you were saying, Rod, it's like, right, you'll suddenly get okay, I need to do an obstacle course or run a marathon or do some training or something, or psychologically the equivalent of that. It's like the grind.
Yeah.
I've seen some really sort of like athletes and stuff with that combination in their charts. So again, that's a perfect example that it's all context. Like I'm saying, like Saturn's fallen in Aries, yada yada, but there's certain people who it'll be really good for, and for whom it'll be somewhat constructive, and it can help to if there have been any blocks. Again, it depends what Saturn symbolizes in your chart or your life. But if the blocks, Saturn in Aries can help to start to dismantle those blocks or take them down a little bit. And that might be through what you're alluding to, Mandy, this sort of feeling of frustration, perhaps a fear that you're not moving fast enough, that you're not getting anywhere, that you're not doing anything. And that could actually cause you to start looking at what's holding you back. Why am I feeling held back? What's stopping me? And that can have a constructive effect. It really depends, A, on the context, B, on how aware you are of what's going on, what the Greeks used to call whether you're living in a state of agnoia or ignorance or not. and most of us are most of the time, to be frank, and see how the astrological factors, like what Saturn is in your chart and where it sits and all the rest of it. But I think more important than just the astrological factors are A and B, context and consciousness.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. And interesting that if you look at this chart here, by the time of the full moon, Pluto will be going retrograde. It's the only retrograde planet in the sky. Oof. So that puts the focus back just when we thought we were all right, because the Mars positions have finished. There's more work to do, but it is going to be in sextile. It goes all the way back, I think, to 1 degree. It doesn't go back into Capricorn again until we'll all be long dead by then, unless we find the cure for death. But there's going to be a sextile from that Saturn in Aries to Pluto. So
yeah, have you noticed? I just noticed though, Mandy, something which I'd literally just clocked. At this full moon, the tightest aspect is that Mercury square, that Pluto.
Yeah, that one, as well. It's exact, pretty much, but it's exact. 2 minutes. Yeah.
Very, very close.
Again.
So that just backs up what you're saying, doesn't it? There's more work to it, sort of bring up all this sort of cognitive stuff about
sort of mindsets stuck in, stuck in your ideas, in your beliefs, and in your mindset, obsessive thinking, and going back to really all the things that we have been learning since Pluto has been in Aquarius. We're going to have, play repeat, but perhaps it'll be a little bit easier this time around. A little bit easier because we will have worked through some of it if we have been doing the work.
Yeah.
Saturn kind of forces us. You've already alluded, Marcus, and you have as well, Rod. Saturn wants us to do the work. Saturn forces us to do the work.
Yeah.
We're going to be, if we don't get off our backside with Saturn in Aries, something will happen to make us get off our backside, and we'll have to look probably quite deeply into ourselves. It's just, I think that Mercury Pluto has a lot to do with psychology as well, psychotherapy, psychology, sort of deep thinking.
Yes, it's interesting because Mercury's going. I mean, obviously this is the new moon, so this is sort of like a moment where we always say like everything sort of comes out on the table a little bit. So maybe around this sort of 12th of May, there may be some. I mean, on an international level, maybe there's some documents revealed or some communications or something about. It could be playing back into that new moon, because that what I was going to say is Mercury is remaking the connection between Pluto and Mars, because it's traveling from the square of Pluto to the square of Mars. But it might just be playing, like coming back, as you were saying, Mandy, like replaying some psychological complexes, but also politically, there might be some conversations about stuff like trade deals or money or the actions of people in power coming to light that are to do with that Taurus stuff about growing money or food or resources or, just living the high life, that are sort of being exposed. But with Mercury, it's going to be more exposure through media and through text and communication. And maybe on a personal level, it'll be like something like resisting, like you're going to have maybe thoughts coming up about challenging thoughts about Taurus stuff, the body, resources, money, how you're handling things, that are going to be, whenever there's a square, there's a tendency to resist. And what you were saying, Mandy, about Saturn, I think in a different way also applies to Pluto. It doesn't give you the option to resist. It's just like you have to deal with what comes up. And with I think that, tell me what you I think the difference between those two planets in terms of practically how they feel is that Pluto will bring stuff up psychologically that you just can't, you have to just go through it and process it. And it feels like it's a matter of survival, but you've just got to process it. And with Saturn, it's more like, it's a similar thing in that you get things coming up that you have to deal with. But with Saturn, it feels to me, even though it can be really depressing, it also feels like it's a bit more like the consequences of your actions with Saturn. It's always karmic. It's always like, yo, you knew this bill was coming. You knew this day was coming. You knew this was going to arrive. This was the consequence of this thing that happened 4 years ago that we all knew was going to blah, blah, blah. So, with Saturn, it's always like the bill that you were kind of expecting but hoping wouldn't arrive. Whereas with Pluto, it can sometimes be like just it comes not necessarily out of nowhere, but it's more psychological, I feel. Does that, I mean, would you both agree with that, or do you?
I think
I totally agree.
Okay.
And then look at that full moon. I think the sun is approaching the Uranus, so it could be come as a surprise. But you just like, should I be surprised? Because like you say, you know the things that due there. The deal is coming, and it's coming, but still it come like a surprise. You just like, hey, oh my God, I didn't expect that. No, you do, but it's just like, and that Uranus is at that. A line, or you say conjunct with Algo. So hey, let's just find things up.
It's potentially a little bit crazy making, isn't it? I mean, there are a couple of. I was just going to look up the lunar mansion because I like to do that, as you know, for fun. But just what I wanted to say, the couple of positive things about this chart. I really, really like the Venus-Mars trine. Because Venus is in Aries, which traditionally means Venus in Aries is obviously not a strong position. Traditionally, she's in detriment, but which means she's a little bit too spicy for her own good. Like basically, Venus in Aries is kind of like it's the romantic equivalent of the one night stand or the flash in the pan or whatever. Now, it doesn't mean if you have Venus in Aries, you have that. My gran had Venus in Aries and she was married for 40 years and blah, blah, blah. It's just, it's the attitude to romance can be a bit like, there's a lot of excitement. It's the Marilyn Monroe thing. It's the glamour, and it's not, and it's also quite competitive and gets bored potentially. But with that trine to Mars, with reception, because Venus is Mars inside, that's really good. That's really good for a good flow of like, if you've got if there's some passion or some attraction, this is quite good for sort of fueling that in a positive way, in a harmonious way. And also Venus has a nice generosity with the sun in Taurus. Venus in Aries, sun in Taurus is quite good for sort of feeling like, I feel quite good about myself and I'm feeling kind of sexy. That's what that configuration is like. But obviously at the same time, we've got this, there's some psychological stuff being triggered, maybe about possessions and money and body and stuff like that. And that's all coming up at the new moon. So it's an interesting little cocktail.
Indeed.
And then what you like,
as you've been speaking, Marcus, when you're talking about the sun in Taurus and Mars in Leo there, and that connection with Venus in Aries, that brings a little bit more loyalty to the picture than we might otherwise see with Venus, doesn't it? A bit more kind of loyalty.
Yes.
That Uranus, we haven't spoken much about that Uranus conjunct the sun yet, and it is quite a standout, isn't it? It's interesting. It's just like unpredictable is how you would predict the energy of Uranus on a full moon. Full moon is always the time when people come out more, when there's a lot more going on, when there's a lot more excitement. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but it's sort of almost like somebody walks out on their partner and spends a night of passion with their secret lover. I mean, there's something like that, because there's that full moon with the Uranus that you're talking about, and that, do you know what I mean? Secret lover, the sun is that, there's secret lover. There's a very, very wide trine from Uranus.
I mean, I'm literally just writing a soap opera plot on the basis of the plot now. But I mean,
or I think it's more like a telenovela.
Indeed, a telenovela. I was thinking, trying to find a word.
Venus in Aries is perfect for a telenovela, Mandy. That's brilliant. Like,
looking for words.
So the lunar mansion was That the image for it is a woman holding her hands in front of her eyes, standing in front of a desert, and in what does it say? Near her is a scorpion. In the background is a desert. We must be steady and assertive. to attain our goals, need to be confrontational, may signal the onset of arguments and conflict, and warn us that we are behaving in a manner too aggressive or argumentative, could presage, not sure how to say that, feelings of loss, of sadness, but the sorrow will pass. And some of the traditional uses of this mansion were to make images to besiege cities and villages, to advance and take them, for the destruction of wealth, to expel people from a place, but also for people to travel better through roads and villages, increase harvests. So there's and to separate and destroy riches of allies. So there's a sense of like there's potential disruption and separation and diminishment of wealth here, but also potential for movement and escape from difficult situations in the mansion. So that's just because it's just a full moon. This isn't an eclipse. It's just like stuff that might come up, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds pretty interesting. There's a lot of things expecting, isn't it?
Yeah,
I need that book.
Yeah, it's really good. Man. It's such a good little reference.
Is it just called Lunar Mansions?
It's called, yeah, it's called for you and all our lovely audience, it's The Mansions of the Moon, and it's by Christopher Warnock and illustrated by Nigel Jackson, and it's lovely. It's really well researched, and just cool. I found it so helpful. Like even any chart, I'll look up the lunar mansion and go, yeah, it sort of almost gives you a Cliff Notes summary.
Cool.
Some of like my lunar mansion is good for friendships, bad for marriage, and really good for healing with medicine. I'm like, yep.
Boom.
You know what I mean? So,
boom.
Yeah.
He's a good astrologer. He did an election for me once, actually, Christopher Warnock.
Hey,
really?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, very good astrologer.
Yeah, he's really good. So,
Talking about book, Mandy, I heard about your prepare something.
Yeah.
Could you give us a little bit?
So nearly 3 years ago, I started a 6-month project to write a book, which was about life purpose, how to sort of find and live life purpose. It's not an astrology book, although the next book will be about the astrology. I've already started the next book, The Astrology of Life Purpose. So there's one for the astrologers and one for the sort of self-help spiritual community as well.
Amazing.
So the book on life purpose, the non-astrology book, is coming out at some time in May. I'm just trying to find the right time. I'm waiting for the right time to sort of drop in before it comes out. So yeah,
really looking forward. Really looking forward. And when you have time, share that with us, okay? And okay, yes. Also, I think Marcus, you and we are going to attend in another conference together. I think in the end of May, I think was the 22nd to 24th.
Yes, it's the Barata conference, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think I should have the date here, but I think you're right. It was the weekend of the 23rd to the 25th of May, I think.
They say 22nd to 24th is in person. Yeah. And then soon, I think they are doing a gentle adjustment, but I think it's around that day in London. So please join us. There's a lot of what are you going to talk about, Marcus?
I am going to be doing a slightly updated version of the talk that I debuted for the Academy of Astrology at your conference last year. So, you know, the Astral Apothecary, I've just slightly updated it with a couple of new charts, and but it's the similar thing. It's like the idea of astrology as a guide to good treatment and how you can use it with medicine in lots of different ways. So yeah.
And I'm going to talk about interesting, it's not a research, it's just an introduction about sun's journey in Chinese medicine view. Okay, I am not Chinese medicine person, but I know the concept of it. So I'm going to put them together. It's like a very fascinating about when Chinese people talking about the solar journey. We don't talk about sun sign, but we don't talk about the season change. And then come with season change, they will give you suggestions about what you should eat, what you should do. You should do more exercise, or you should do this and that. That was kind of very interesting. So I'm going to put them together to introduce this. And then also very quickly, tomorrow I'm going to give the workshop of local space map for the beginner. So if anyone haven't registered yet, please come to join us on the 20th of June. No, 20th of June. No, sorry, again. Mr. Like 7th of June, Christine Skinner going to talk about the middle point for Academy of Astrology. So please come to join us. Okay. Well, thanks everyone for joining me, and I know it's a little bit late for Marcus, but thanks you to stay here and the Monday. So see you next time. Bye bye.